Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Liesl Pereira. I work here at the ACLU of Illinois on our philanthropy and engagement team. And as part of my role here, I work closely with the Next Generation Society. We are so delighted to have you with us for the 2021 Next Generation Society Fall Fundraiser. We have live captions for tonight's event. To turn them on, please click the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. We begin tonight with the acknowledgement that the ACLU of Illinois exists on the traditional homelands of the people of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wee, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. We recognize them, the legacy of violence, settlement, and displacement these people suffered and survived. And we recognize the importance of reverting this common history, of which we are all a part, by supporting Indigenous communities' continued struggles for respect, self-determination, and sovereignty, and to right the historic wrongs of colonialism and state violence. It has been a tough 18 months of pandemic, and we know how important your time is. On behalf of the Next Gen board and the entire ACLU family, I want to thank you for joining us virtually for the next hour for our program, and hope that you will also join us at 8 p.m. for our trivia happy hour. I also want to thank our corporate presenting sponsors, Google and Defanca, for their support of tonight's event. This is an important time for the ACLU. After 4 years of fending off the Trump administration's relentless attacks on civil rights and liberties at the federal level, we are now seeing increased attacks on fundamental rights and liberties at the state level. Across the country, we are seeing coordinated efforts to restrict transgender rights, abortion rights, and the right to vote. But the ACLU, alongside our supporters, partners, and clients, are relentlessly pushing back against an unprecedented flood of attacks, and we are committed to the fight. At a time when the future looks so uncertain, the Next Generation Society is more important than ever. With over 300 members, over 1,500 community members, NextGen is a vibrant and diverse community for activists, artists, emerging leaders, professionals, and engaged citizens committed to supporting the essential work of the ACLU and safeguarding civil liberties for future generations. Our work has continued during this virtual time, growing our membership base, raising funds to support the ACLU, and building partnerships with engaged and passionate people who are dedicated to building a country that works for all of us. NextGen is an important part of the ACLU family, and our board and society members serve as future leaders, the ones who will carry the mission of the ACLU forward. Their activism, engagement, and support has been inspiring, especially during a time when many of us are looking for ways to feel hopeful. Tonight's program features the voices of the next generation of leaders. You'll hear from a poet and activist who is using her voice to spread messages of awareness, from the Next Gen board leaders about why this work is so important to them, and from ACLU attorneys who are on the front lines to protect our civil liberties and civil rights. I hope that you feel inspired by their determination, because your partnership is so important to this fight, so that all of us can work together for a brighter future that is fair, equitable, and just. To kick off our program this evening, I am so pleased to introduce Chima Naira Okuru, a first-generation Nigerian from the south side of Chicago and a soon-to-be graduate at Columbia College. Naira is an activist and co-founder of a 4-person collective called Black Rising, which focuses on organizing, abolition work, and mutual aid. She is the community organizing section editor at Southside Weekly and a teaching artist at Young Chicago Authors, and is here this evening to present one of her poems. Please welcome Naira.
Hello. So happy to be here. I really appreciate y'all's time. Once again, my name is Naira, and I'm going to be sharing a piece called The Allegory of the Activist. Did you know that Assata Shakur's favorite color is orange? That's crazy, right? Did you know her favorite breakfast food is pancakes? She likes to ride bikes. Her drink of choice is red wine. Her go-to album is A Miseducation. And when she was 7, she got a scar on her left knee that never left her. Did you know I'm making this up? I tried to Google little known facts about her, and all I could find were articles. A media tug of war, terrorist, hero, fugitive, killer, revolutionary, activist, legend, but nothing said great cook. Nothing said dog owner. Her entire personality and lifelong lived snipped from her legacy the minute those cops cut their lights on behind her. No. Did you know that there are spaces in history made for her, designed to hold the framework of her name, the weight of her life, her real life, and do it well? But instead, in May 2013, the United States declares Assata Shakur to be one of the FBI's most wanted. They put $2 million on her head, and on that day, she made history because she was the first woman ever put on that list. This hole in history is a wide circle. They cut it right through the middle of existence and then pushed Assata in. Doesn't matter who she wants to be or what she imagined her space in history to be shaped like. On May 2nd, 2013, they decided for her. A few months ago, someone told me they don't know I wrote poetry. They did not know I wrote poetry. I have been writing for as long as I can remember. I learned how to fit words together before I was allowed to sit in the front seat. Some people learned the sound of my voice before they knew my name. They called me poet. I wondered what it was like the first time someone learned Assata makes quilts in her free time. A person happens upon her at a market and asks what she's been up to. She says, I have a vegetable garden. It's doing really well. But that wouldn't be interesting, would it? If her life was an action film full of surround sound, explosions, and heavy breathing, would you even watch? Have you ever cared to know if she likes flowers? Have you ever heard her name in any context aside from hero or villain? Have you ever even heard her real name? Do you even know my real name? Did you know that my friends make music? They skateboard. One of my friends makes comic books. Did you know that after an action, I go home? I walk my dog. I make citrus tea when I'm anxious and I have 12 plants. I am not an activist when I visit my mom. I'm just the child she sends to grab her a napkin since I'm standing. And for months, I stood next to people whose names only made headlines when they stood on the front lines with think pieces plastered over their faces. They chopped bite-sized chunks so hour-long press conferences can fit between the nightly news and dinner. They don't even include our full sentences, let alone the full paragraphs of our lives. Did you know they made this fight a life sentence, a constant fleeing? And they scroll past anything you do that doesn't involve being pepper sprayed. Sometimes when I speak, I can hear my shoes tap dancing on the wood to freedom or the idea of it. This is the allegory of the activist. When you decide you are fit to fight, someone scrapes away all your other layers without your permission because they're no longer interesting enough. History will do whatever it sees fit with the lives of Black leaders whose shadows are shaped by the light of a legacy they don't define for themselves. Make them role models, make them martyrs, make them legends, when all ever asked was to be seen as human. And that's that piece. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you this evening. My name is Robert Middleton. I'm the Vice President of the Next Generation Society. I have to say that was an incredible poem and performance. Thank you so much, Naira, for being part of this evening's program. The Next Generation Society has been working with poets from young Chicago authors for a number of years, and we're always so thrilled to include the work of incredible artists like Naira in our fall fundraiser. Thank you for sharing your voice and your art with our community. I have been involved with the Next Generation Society since it started in 2015. I've served as a cooperating attorney with the ACLU of Illinois, working on advancing LGBTQ rights for the past 7 years. And I've seen firsthand how important their work is to the clients and communities impacted by unjust laws and unfair practices. Through NextGen, I have been able to support the ACLU by engaging in the issues, advocating for them, and raising funds. As a cooperating attorney and a member of the LGBT community, I have seen how critical it is that the ACLU continues the work that it does here in Illinois and nationwide. And that means that we need ACLU lawyers and advocates now and in the future. I am so pleased to introduce our featured speakers for tonight's program, attorneys at the ACLU of Illinois who work on some of the most pressing issues that we are facing as a country, the fight to protect personal and bodily autonomy for reproductive rights. Davina DiPaolo and Rachel Johnson are two voices for change that represent the future of the ACLU. Please join me in welcoming them and our moderator, Liesl.
Thanks so much, Robert. We are excited to be with you all tonight for this conversation. Over the past year, in state legislatures across the country and in the courts, we have seen an onslaught of targeted attacks on access to abortion and personal and bodily autonomy. Tonight, I'm joined by my incredible colleagues to discuss the fight for reproductive rights. From the ACLU of Illinois Women's and Reproductive Rights Project, I'd like to introduce legal fellow Davina DiPaolo, and staff attorney Rachel Johnson. Thank you both so much for being here. I'm so glad to be in discussion with the two of you about the important work that you're doing, and I want to dive right in to talk about the attacks on abortion that we are seeing throughout the country. I know that a lot of people have Texas on their mind and the direct challenge to Roe v. Wade that will be in front of the Supreme Court on December 1st. While we don't yet fully know the breadth of the consequences of these laws and cases, the ACLU, alongside many other organizations and advocates, are working to challenge these bans and expand access, especially as restrictions across states primarily impact low-income people and communities of color. So, Rachel, could you share what the fight for reproductive rights and access looks like at a nationwide level right now?
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. So it's hard not to be completely inundated with news about what's happening to abortion access in other states, particularly Texas, which recently banned abortion after 6 weeks before most people know they're pregnant, and essentially created a bounty hunting scheme deputizing private citizens to enforce that ban. And we know that SCOTUS has already turned its back on Roe when it decided not to stop this law from going into effect. So while these outright bans are devastating and causing great harm to pregnant people in Texas and other states with similar laws, the truth is that abortion access was already out of reach for many people across the US. And creating restrictions and chipping away at access to abortion has long been a strategy of anti-abortion extremists. Opponents of abortion have been designing laws to limit access even before these outright bans were passed, and even though Roe v. Wade currently remains the law of the land. So earlier this year, we saw a number of states put into place laws that required providers to have unnecessary credentials. We saw laws that forced attacks on medication abortion access, dilation and evacuation procedure bans, which are common in second trimester. We saw bans if part of the patient's reason for seeking an abortion might be based on fetal diagnosis, and cruel and onerous requirements mandating burial of cremation of fetal tissue.
So it sounds like these abortion restrictions are just pushing abortion out of reach for everyone without explicitly banning it.
Right. Many folks in the US are already living in a post-Roe society. And these attacks on essential reproductive health care also cannot be viewed in isolation. Because of racism and structural inequality in access to care, the harm of abortion restrictions falls hardest on people of color, low-income people, youth, immigrants, LGBTQ people, people in rural areas and other marginalized communities, as you mentioned. And what we know from this is that rights are meaningless without access, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is what is really at risk as state legislators chip away at people's ability to make their own healthcare decisions. And with the Supreme Court set to hear a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade, as you mentioned, in December, and Texas and other states enforcing an extreme ban on abortion, politicians are working overtime to force people to continue pregnancies against their will. And it's quite scary and dangerous. But the good news is, despite these bad laws, some states like Illinois are fighting back to ensure that the right to abortion remains protected within their borders, no matter what happens to Roe v. Wade.
Thanks, Rachel. It's good to know that Illinois does have strong protections against these types of attacks. And I know that some of the strongest protections come from the Reproductive Health Act, but we know that there is still so much work to do to ensure that everyone in Illinois can access these rights. So could you talk a little bit about the ongoing work to implement the Reproductive Health Act?
Sure. So just to give an overview of what the Illinois Reproductive Health Act is, or otherwise known as the RHA, so with the anti-abortion legal landscape being what it is, as I just discussed, Illinois recognized the critical need to establish the fundamental right to reproductive health care, and that is how the RHA got passed. The RHA codifies into Illinois law abortion access, as well as other important health protections if Roe v. Wade is overturned or otherwise greatly diminished, which is a possibility. The RHA does three things. It establishes that fundamental right for autonomous decision-making around reproductive health care and establishes a private right of action if those are violated. And And it also updated Illinois' outdated law, ensuring that the state treats abortion, contraception, and maternal care just like all other health care. And it also requires private insurance coverage of abortion, private Illinois insurance coverage of abortion. And so it's a really great law that we have on the books, but it's difficult to spread the word about it. And it's difficult to share sort of what it says and who needs to get into compliance and how. So for example, I'm sure many folks here have had experiences trying to communicate with your insurance provider or benefits department to determine what's covered or not and why. You know, you call a hotline, you get passed around, maybe there's third-party administrators, and there's rarely a straight answer. And so that's what we're seeing happening with abortion coverage under the RHA in Illinois. So one thing we're doing to ensure implementation is working in coalition with amazing partners like the Chicago Abortion Fund, and we're regularly advocating on behalf of people seeking abortion care but who have been denied coverage by insurance companies, by working with providers, educating insurance companies, and fighting for that proper coverage. We're also engaged in public education around ensuring healthcare providers are providing care on the pregnant person's terms and respecting autonomous decision-making during pregnancy and labor.
So then what would you say are the remaining barriers to accessing reproductive health care that remain in Illinois?
Well, the biggest issue for accessing abortion care in Illinois is the Parental Notification Act, the PNA, and Davina will discuss that more in depth. However, we're also concerned about the role of religion in healthcare and how healthcare systems or providers are using religion as a basis for refusing fundamental health care. In Illinois, there is a law called the Healthcare Right of Conscience Act, or HCRA, that allows healthcare providers to deny care based on religious beliefs. And this is obviously very problematic because people seeking birth control or seeking to terminate a pregnancy, LGBTQ folks, they're often getting denied fundamental and critical care on account of a provider's religious beliefs. HCRA got amended in 2016 to ensure that even if a provider denies care based on religion, they're still providing comprehensive information and referrals for that necessary care. So balancing the First Amendment with that. And so while it's better with this amendment, the law still has certain carve-outs. You might have seen in the news that some employees are now using the law to refuse COVID vaccination and testing, claiming that their religious views are preventing them from doing so. But it was never the intention of legislators to use this law in the face of a major public health crisis. So we're sort of waiting to see how things play out in the courts right now. But it is a concern because of, what we've seen from SCOTUS is that our current justices are inclined to uphold religious rights over other rights. So, keeping an eye on religion as a basis for refusing healthcare is definitely an issue we're focused on.
Thanks, Rachel. You mentioned PNA, and that is a great way to pull you in, Davina. Davina, can you share what the Parental Notice of Abortion Act is and why it's so important to repeal it?
Yes, thank you, Liesl. And good evening, everyone. Really happy to be here. So in Illinois, young people under 18 can access any type of pregnancy-related health care without being required to involve a parent, with one exception, and that is abortion. So abortion is the only type of pregnancy-related health care for which young people in Illinois are forced by law to involve their parents, even though having an abortion is safer than continuing a pregnancy or childbirth. And so the ACLU of Illinois successfully fought against harmful forced parental involvement laws in the courts for nearly 40 years. But in 2013, the Illinois Parental Notice of Abortion Act, otherwise known as PNA, finally went into effect. And so since 2013, this law has forced people under the age of 18 who are seeking abortion care to notify an adult family member at least 48 hours before the abortion is performed.
So who would qualify as someone who could be notified?
So the adult family members who qualify under this law are parents grandparents, step-parents who live in the home with the minor, or a legal guardian. And it's really important to understand that the majority of young people who experience an unplanned pregnancy voluntarily involve an adult family member in their decision-making process. However, some pregnant minors cannot. For some young people, forced parental involvement can lead to really significant harms, such as physical or emotional abuse, being kicked out of their homes, being forced to continue the pregnancy against their will, delay of abortion care, and dangerous attempts to self-abort the pregnancy.
Those are really scary possibilities. Are there any exceptions to the law?
Yes, so there are a few narrow exceptions, and one of these is for young people to participate in an expedited and confidential court proceeding where they can obtain something that is called a judicial bypass, which is where we come in. And so a judicial bypass is a waiver granted by a judge, and this allows the minor to bypass the parental notification requirement. So when the courts finally allowed P&A to take effect, that is when the ACLU of Illinois established the Illinois Judicial Bypass Coordination Project. And this is a live hotline that disseminates information about the parental notice law and provides free legal assistance to minors who need to go to court to obtain a judicial bypass. And the ACLU of Illinois, along with many other coalition members, are still fighting hard to repeal P&A so that minors no longer need to jeopardize their well-being by either being forced to notify adult family members or having to go to court to access an abortion. But until P&A is repealed, the Bypass Project will continue to help young people navigate this process.
So the ACLU of Illinois runs this hotline to assist young folks in getting, a judicial bypass waiver. But could you share a little bit more about how the hotline actually functions and the impact that it has on young people who are seeking abortion access?
Yep, so we run a live hotline, as you said, where minors can call, text, or email us for help. And our hotline is run by volunteers who are trained to provide general information about the Parental Notice of Abortion Act to folks who contact us. And if a young person wants to pursue a judicial bypass and go to court, then our volunteers will then connect them with our on-call staff attorneys in order to start that process. And so I serve as the bypass coordinator, and part of my role is to represent minors in these bypass hearings. I also connect them to pro bono attorneys who will represent them. I also connect young people to different necessary resources and just provide them with general support throughout this difficult process.
So speaking of support, could you share just a little bit about the challenges that these clients face as they navigate this process?
Absolutely. So minors face a lot of challenges throughout this process, unsurprisingly. Before the pandemic, minors had to physically go to court in order to attend their hearings. Once the pandemic started, courts thankfully switched to virtual hearings. However, even though this has helped make attending hearings more accessible, young people still have a lot of logistical challenges and have to find ways to prepare with their attorneys, participate in the actual hearing, schedule their procedure, and they have to do all of this without raising suspicion from family members. And so given these challenges, I sometimes will have to prepare with clients late at night while their parents are asleep. Many young people have to do their hearings in their car just because that is the only private place they can find during court hours. And as much support as we provide to these young people, this process is still an incredibly difficult and sometimes traumatic experience for them because they're being forced to reveal, some of the most intimate details of their life with a complete stranger, including a judge who, is someone in a position of great authority. And so this is why it is so critical for us to repeal P&A and allow young people to access the abortion care they need without jeopardizing their well-being.
That's so true. Thanks, Davina. With so much going on to attack reproductive rights, I want to make sure that we also continue to stay focused on the onslaught of attacks that we're seeing against transgender people. Nationwide, we're seeing attacks on trans youth who are seeking access to gender-affirming healthcare. In Illinois, we just had a major court victory in our case Monroe v. Jeffries, where we represent all transgender people in the custody of the Illinois Department of Corrections. a federal court found that the Illinois Department of Corrections, which is often called IDOC, violated the Eighth Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment by failing to provide adequate treatment for gender dysphoria. And the court ordered IDOC to take immediate steps to improve healthcare, including search policies and housing decisions for people who have gender dysphoria. And the court also left the door open for additional relief. This was a big win, but it's important to understand that the unjust treatment for people who are transgender isn't happening in isolation. So Rachel, could you talk a little bit about how healthcare for LGBTQ folks is linked to the fight for reproductive rights and abortion access?
Yes, the LGBTQ and reproductive rights movements are inseparable. We are all working for the right to live our lives with dignity and the right to choose how we use our bodies without government intrusion. Many LGBTQ people already face significant barriers to accessing health services and are compounded by barriers like poverty, unreliable transportation, inability to take time off of work, immigration status, and of course, bias in healthcare and bias in healthcare providers. So by denying access to abortion care or healthcare generally, existing disparities are often exacerbated. And we know that those who seek to restrict reproductive decisions are often the same people who want to control what LGBTQ people do with their bodies and how they access healthcare. And so it is now more important than ever that the LGBTQ and reproductive rights movements work together to build strong, inclusive coalitions so that we can create change and equity for all.
All right, thanks. We have to wrap up the discussion soon, but first, Davina, I just wanted to ask you what one thing you'd like folks on the call to take away tonight.
So I strongly encourage everyone to contact their state legislators as soon as possible and tell them that you want this law repealed, P&A, during the October veto session. Legislators really care about what their constituents have to say. And so sharing, your outrage about Texas and encouraging them to protect the rights of young people by repealing P&A is incredibly important. You should also encourage family and friends and professional networks to do the same. If you or anyone you know wants to learn more about the harms caused by the Parental Notice of Abortion Act and the reasons why repeal is so critical to helping young people, I strongly encourage folks to read the report, The Only People It Really Affects Are the People It Hurts, which was published this past March by the Human Rights Watch and the ACLU of Illinois. And finally, it's just very important that we normalize abortion in general. And so saying the word out loud and recognizing that it is healthcare and it is not something that needs to, be said in secret is really important. So just recognizing that abortion is healthcare and helping remove the stigma.
And I know that there are so many pressing issues that the ACLU works on that we didn't get to tonight. Rachel, could you quickly say what you think one issue is that you think folks joining us should really pay attention to in this moment?
Sure, yes, there are so many issues, especially as we look at the terrible impact of the Texas law. We know the people most likely to be impacted are Black and Brown people who are seeking abortion care and groups that are already facing barriers because of systemic discrimination. And so deep-seated systemic racism and inequities permeate these institutions from housing to healthcare. And so racial equity is certainly an issue to be focusing on, as well as voting rights, right? Like the majority of people want to uphold Roe. So we really have to think about who has access to the voting booth and who is being silenced and how we can create equity and expand voter rights.
So before we finish, I just wanted to talk a little bit about hope. We've talked a lot tonight about attacks and the uphill battle, but I would love to know what is giving you both hope right now when you think about the future of this work. Could we go first to you, Davina, and then to you, Rachel?
Yes, so there are two things that I'm particularly hopeful about. As a bypass coordinator for our hotline, I have the privilege of working very closely with many young people, and I have personally witnessed just how incredibly strong and resilient these young people are in the face of adversity. So just in general, the young people I work with, they have such big dreams for their future, and my interactions with them just always give me hope that they will go on to do great things in the world. And secondly, something that gives me hope is just my amazing colleagues and the coalition partners that I work with throughout Illinois. Folks are always so willing to step in and help out clients however they can. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to just the strong network of supporters who work so tirelessly to help our young people. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yes, I mean, forever echoing our clients as beacons of hope. Our clients using their voices to not only elevate their own situation, but to really pave a path for future people to use their voice, and making it a little bit easier for others to access healthcare or power in any other way. It's just so hopeful to see people using their voices, not just our clients, but also people around the country just being activated to create change. The beautiful ways that mutual aid is unfolding in communities, and also powerful legislation that's moving us in a positive direction, like the Women's Health Protection Act. So those are some things that give me hope.
Thank you so much, both of you. We really appreciate your time tonight and for sharing with all of us about the important work that you do. For everybody joining us tonight, there are so many things that you can do, and it is so important for each of us to stay committed to this fight. You can read more about these topics. As Davina mentioned, there's a report. There are other resources that are available on our website. You can go to a protest to demand action and change. You can call your elected officials to let them know how you feel about what's going on and to ask them to take action. You can vote, and you can support the ACLU and other organizations who are doing this work. The most important thing is to use your voice however feels right to you. Now, I'm gonna hand it off to Nida Ghaffar, president of the Next Generation Society. Under Nida's incredible leadership over the last 3 years, NextGen has grown and continued to be an important part of the ACLU. Please welcome Nida.
Thank you to Davina, Rachel, and Liesl for such an inspiring conversation. And good evening, everyone. My name is Nida Ghaffar, and I am president of the ACLU Next Generation Society. I, like many others who were outraged during the last administration, joined the Next Gen Society because I was angry, scared, and needed an outlet to be able to voice my frustration and take action. Back in 2017, my frustration was with the Muslim ban, immigration policies, and how the Trump administration treated people who look like me. 4 years later, and under a different federal administration, the ACLU continues to be the organization that I'm turning to because I'm still angry and still scared. This time, because of the many states across the country that are passing abortion bans. To any person that needs access to reproductive rights or who supports people who need access to reproductive rights, we recognize that the decision about having a baby or having an abortion is personal and should remain private. This decision is monumental, and people should be free to make it without stigma, without fear, and without restrictions. Nearly 1 in 3 women will have an abortion in her lifetime, and 6 out of every 10 women who have abortions are already mothers. As a soon-to-be mother myself, watching what is happening in our country once again has become even more personal to me. Many people in this country are not afforded the same choices I am here in Illinois because they live in a state that is doing everything that it can to make their choice for them. Lawmakers are forcing their personal beliefs on people by creating barriers to prevent their access to essential reproductive health care. This is not the kind of world I want to raise my child in. This year, state lawmakers across the nation have introduced 561 bills blocking access to abortion. As you heard this evening, because of the incredible work of the ACLU, our laws protecting reproductive rights in Illinois are some of the best in the country, but they don't go far enough. It is vital that here at home, we remain vigilant and do all that we can to protect the right to abortion, the right to choose the best future for ourselves. Illinois has enacted strong protections, but we must continue to work to ensure equitable access to reproductive health care for all in our state and nationwide, especially as so many people are experiencing the hardship of what it means to live in a place where you cannot make decisions over your own body. The fight that we are seeing in Texas and in numerous other states, including our neighbors in Indiana and Missouri, is not going to go away. We need to ensure that all people have access to the reproductive health care they are guaranteed by law. The work that the ACLU is doing right now in Illinois to repeal the Parental Notice of Abortion Act is critical to ensuring that young people have personal and bodily autonomy. Veto session in the Illinois legislature is happening right now, and we all have a role to play in putting pressure on our elected officials in Illinois to make sure they do the right thing and repeal parental notice of abortion. You'll hear about direct action you can take from our Next Generation Society board members soon. The Next Gen Society works hard to support the essential work of the ACLU. We are a vibrant and diverse group of activists, professionals, artists, emerging leaders, and engaged citizens committed to supporting the ACLU and safeguarding civil liberties for future generations. Since NextGen was founded in 2015, our work has provided a platform for people to get involved with the ACLU. We are able to advocate, to educate, and to bring others to the table so that they too can make a difference. I joined NextGen because I didn't want to be a bystander as I watched our democratic norms fall and our constitutional protections be relentlessly attacked. And by being a part of this work, I know that I'm making a difference. Tonight, I invite all of you to join us in this fight for change. The Next Gen Society is finishing up our fourth year in a 5-year Freedom Fund campaign to raise $1 million in support of the ACLU. Thank you for being with us for all these years and for helping us to achieve success. The funds raised through this campaign and in the future go to support NextGen's goal of fully funding a staff attorney. This year, we announced that the ACLU will have a named staff position, the Next Generation Staff Attorney. We are so proud of this achievement and our ability to have a permanent impact on the issues that affect all of us. You heard tonight about the critical work being done at the ACLU, but this doesn't happen without you. Of course, there are many ways to support the work of the ACLU, but giving a donation, even a small amount, helps the ACLU continue to do the tireless work that creates real change. The link to give is in the chat, or you can text the word NextGen to the number 243-725. It's one way to show that we are all in this together. If you take one thing away from tonight's program, I hope it's the confidence that you can rely on the ACLU. No other organization is going to be as committed to working in partnership with the most marginalized in our country. And no other organization is going to fight harder for your civil liberties, even if you don't know when you or someone you love will need to rely on them. Thank you for being with us tonight. Before we play trivia tonight, we are ending our program with a call to action from our incredible co-chairs of the Next Gen Events Committee, Scarleth and Deena Prescavage.
My name is Deena Prescavage. I serve as one of the co-chairs of the Events Committee. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. The Fall Fundraiser is NextGen's main fundraising event, and during the pandemic, it has been our only fundraising event. We hope that if you were able to give, you made a donation to support the important work that you heard about tonight. However, making a donation is not the only way to support this work. As Davina shared earlier, it is critical that the dangerous Parental Notice of Abortion Act is repealed as soon as possible. Legislators are currently in Springfield for veto session, and they need to hear directly from you on this issue. If folks are willing and able, we encourage you to call your state legislators and leave a voicemail asking them to repeal the Parental Notice of Abortion Act. You can make your voice heard by calling the phone numbers on the screen and asking your Illinois House representative and senator to support and sponsor legislation to repeal the Parental Notice of Abortion Act. Here's how it works. When you dial these numbers, you will hear a recorded prompt giving a brief description of the bill and a few suggested talking points. You will then be prompted to enter your zip code. Depending upon where you live, you will either be automatically connected with the office of your representative or senator, or you may be asked to choose the name of your representative from a list because some zip codes include parts of multiple districts. If you need help finding the names of your legislators, please click the link in the chat. Please note that legislative offices are closed for the night and calls will likely go to voicemail. Please leave a message. This takes less than 2 minutes. Please take action tonight. And please share this urgent call to action with your family, your friends, and your colleagues.
Thank you, Deena, for sharing that information. Hi, everyone. My name is Scarleth Ortiz. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our program. We hope that you will join us now for our trivia after party. The email that you received today contained the link for trivia. You can also click the link that will appear in the chat. If you sign up for trivia ahead of time, you'll be able to select the group that you will be playing with. If you didn't sign up but still want to join us, please click the trivia link and we will place you in the right group. It will take a few minutes to get everyone into their groups. So please be patient while we open the breakout rooms and get everyone where they need to be. If you have any questions, you can email us at events@aclu-il.org. Again, we want to thank our amazing sponsors this evening and all of you for joining us. We appreciate your time and all you do to support NextGen. Thank you.